Oh my God, thank you, thank you. Okay, I'm going to get closer. Do you notice that? Can you tell who's the one who actually runs for office versus the ones who runs my office, right? I know how to get nice and close to that microphone. I really want to thank everybody for coming out. As you know, it's Friday evening. There's other things on, there's graduations and others, but this was a time that I could make it out to make sure I heard, we wanted to focus a bit on veterans. Because across my beautiful district, a lot of people are raising issues of veterans. But before we can do that, we want to make sure we've done so much. I have so much on my binder here, so I have to move over. So what we want to do is begin with the New Mexico National Guard Youth Challenge Academy, who is going to be our color guard for today and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So as we all honor this beautiful country of ours, I shall let them begin.
Detail, work time. Left, forward, march, left, left, work time, march, left, pinwheel, march. Detail, hold. Ready, go. Freeze it, arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag
of the state of New Mexico. First symbol
of
perfect ship among united cultures.
Order, arms. Ready, cut. Mark time, march. Left, pinwheel, march. Forward, march. Left, mark time, march. Move, hold. Arm holster to your right. Fall out.
I really want to thank the New Mexico National Guard Youth Challenge Academy. We had some conversations earlier, and several of them are indeed interested in going into the service and going into the Army, others becoming welders, and some I talked to a couple who were actually interested in perhaps learning more about government service. So that was really fun. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very thankful for you coming out. As many of you know, I am a daughter of a veteran, but more importantly, New Mexicans are incredibly patriotic. We are one of those states that has a higher rate and percentage of veterans because of our patriotism. Our community members, whether it's Native Americans, Latinos, Anglo-Americans, we answer the call to serve. And because we answer the call to serve, we also know how important it is that our VA then answers the call to provide the services that our veterans have earned. Whether they served in World War II, in Vietnam, in Korea, during the Cold War, during our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, during the times when we were not at war, or their service now with the tensions around the world. And so I think it is incredibly important that I say this all the time, and it's on my material that you've seen, that we not only say to a veteran, thank you for your service, but that we provide the veteran with the services that they have earned. And not just in New Mexico, but across this nation, we are hearing a lot of worry and concern from the veteran community because they're not just hearing about, but feeling, they are experiencing the cuts that the VA is having right now. There is plans to cut 80,000 employees of the VA. They've already cut many of those. I took one of those stories with me to the president's address to Congress. Her name was Ariel Pines, and she's up in Curry County at Cannon Air Force Base. Her husband works at Cannon, and she worked for the VA for 15 years. She was terminated when DOGE came in and said, we're going to just fire everybody who is a probationary employee. And they didn't ask, what were you doing? How long have you worked? They just fired everybody, right? They terminated everybody. The absurdity of what happened there was Ariel Pines was not a probationary employee in the sense that she had just gotten there. She had worked for the VA for 15 years. She first started helping out veterans when she was 11, because her mom was a nurse at the VA. Her father served in the military. Her husband is active duty at Cannon. Her brother is active duty. She comes from a line, from a family, like many families, who actually service is in their blood and is generational. And this is the kicker. Ariel had just gotten a promotion about a year earlier so that she could figure out how the VA could be more efficient. So the Department of Government Efficiency fired her. And we all know, any veteran out there knows that the VA needs to get better, right? So we're not disputing that. The VA needs to get better. But you don't make the VA better by just summarily firing every probationary employee, because the probationary employees include people who were so good at their job that they got a promotion, like Ari, right? And so it was only because there was a court case and because there was such public outcry that Ari has now been hired back. But that was because the courts forced them to do it. That's because the community forced them to do that. So another really big thing that we've hearing about that we're very worried about is that they've shut down the Veterans Affairs Servicing Purchase Program. That's a very long name. What the heck is the Veterans Affairs Service Purchasing Program? But any of you who've used that know that that is the program to make sure that veterans don't lose their home, that assists in veterans being able to make their mortgages. And so now there is a concern that there are about 80,000 veterans and their families could lose their homes if we do not get this back on track. Because the other thing that we need is we need people to answer the phones. When you try to cut 80,000 employees, they're both 80,000, you're cutting the people that are answering the phones. Now, many of you know, and we say it over and over again, that reach out to my office, because we can be the WD-40 for the federal agencies. And one of the biggest areas in which we unstick things, that's why I call it the WD-40, is we can unstick things, right, is in the areas of the VA. There are too many veterans who are waiting for their benefits to get processed, who paperwork got lost. And so my staff helps with that. But if you fire and terminate just a number that you picked from the sky, 80,000 employees. Well, that's going to get harder. You're going to need a lot more cans of WD-40, and that's simply not right. And I want to take this moment right now to call out our Carlos Sanchez, who is the head of our district constituent affairs. Carlos, go ahead and stand up. If you do not have his number, make sure you get his number. Carlos he's like got the best, biggest can of WD-40 of anybody. And he's really great about getting that done. And through the talk, I'll introduce various members of my staff. I have been very dedicated to VA issues. Some of the things I've done is increase the funding for the VA. We increased the funding significantly during my first 2 years in office. And that's in that sheet that we've handed out. And that got passed into the law of the Biden administration, because we know that part of the issue with the VA is that for a while, we didn't have a lot, we had the big wars, the World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, and then there had been a bit of a lull. But when we had the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, we had a lot more veterans coming back, and the VA was not equipped, which is why we needed to increase funding for it. And the big thing that we also did was pass the PACT Act. And that's, as veterans all know, that's the act that said, if you were suffering from the respiratory and other ailments that come from the burn pits, that come from Agent Orange, that come from all that, you should not have to die waiting to get services. So that was a bipartisan law that got was mostly Democrats, but we got a lot of Republicans voting for it, which was great. It was bipartisan, signed into law by Biden. And that required increasing, because it was like, you do not need to come and beg to get this covered. It is going to be covered because the science and the medical shows that if you were near those burn pits, if you were exposed to some of the unique conditions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Korea, you're sick because of your service, and you shouldn't have to beg to get your benefits. And so that's why we passed that law. And that's kind of some of the work that ARU was doing, was how can we get those veterans in faster so they can see their doctor faster? This is a different approach of saying, what are the needs and how do we meet those needs? And how do we improve the VA, because it's got problems, versus let's just cut everything. And the reality is, I also had a problem, I was somebody who wasn't willing, I'm criticizing what the Trump administration is doing now, but I also criticized what the Biden administration did, right? There was that moment where they were going to close 4 community-based outpatient clinics in my district. And so I went and listened and spent hours listening to veterans tell their story in Gallup, in Raton, in Las Vegas, in Española. That's where the 4 clinics, yours was not on the list. And we kept them open. And that's what happens when you show up and you listen, and then you push back. And so we were able to defeat that effort and keep those clinics open. The last thing I want to talk about is this idea that we could rename Veterans Day Victory Day. I never thought that one of my jobs would be to fight against maintaining the name Veterans Day. I received a letter, nobody could have said it better than this. I received a letter from John, who served in the US Air Force, whose family has served in nearly every American conflict in the 20th century. He wrote this, open quote, "I did not serve for a politician. I served for the Constitution and for the people of the United States. Trump's proposal is nothing more than a naked attempt to erase the name Veterans Day and replace it with hollow, generic praise easily twisted to serve a political agenda. That's not patriotism, that's propaganda. Veterans Day is about a 19-year-old who never came home from Fallujah. It's about the Vietnam vet still bearing the scars of war. It's about the airmen who watched the Soviet threat in the dead of night. It's about the countless names etched onto walls, folded into flags, and whispered in prayer. You do not name them. You do not erase them. That was such a powerful letter. And it's powerful words and stories like John's that do make a difference and that can change minds. As you know, for now, Trump has said he's not going to rename it for now. So I wanted to sort of end with that because I think it is an example, the same way with the community-based outpatient clinics and with the court cases that have gotten people like Ari rehired. It's when people show up and share their stories that we actually can win. Maybe not every battle, but some of the battles. And so that's why I am very grateful that you have all come here tonight to share with me some of your stories. So what we're going to do is I want to just maybe raise your hand and share with me what your concerns are. I want to introduce Trish Dominguez. We get her phone number. She is my district director. So she is in charge of, as you heard earlier, managing the office. And so she'll hand you a mic so that you can ask your question out loud or share your story. Oh, over here first.
Of course, like I don't have a more, I'm out. Hi, Teresa.
Hello there.
Roswell.
I love coming to Roswell.
Chilly on your way out. So we've been doing, Woke Junkies is a private Facebook group on here. Anybody can join if you're a Democrat and not a MAGA. And you can join the group. And that's how I've been telling people about our protests. And we have been out at least 4 times now. One time we almost had 70 people. Woo! So, but aside from that, I've been watching Rachel too, and Rachel is talking about what you're saying is that when people like immediately go and address a grievance that this regime has committed this time, then what we end up saying is, how do we get ourselves organized to be able to, when a veteran or when an immigrant has an issue, how do we, can we get your help in setting up phone chains and setting up immediate responses so that we're actually out on the streets within a couple of hours so that we can, I mean, I don't know how to do that. So that's
Right.
what I'd like to be able to do.
So I think this issue of being able to be alert to when something is not going well, right, when a veteran's mistreated, when anybody in society is mistreated, regardless of what your political affiliation is, right? As your congresswoman,
Yes,
I
of course.
represent everybody. So, but yes, so reach out, reach out to us, reach out to Carlos, reach out to Trish, reach out to Ben Salazar. Whereas Ben Salazar is here. Ben Salazar, so I'm going to like one by one, so you don't have to remember everybody. Ben Salazar is my field representative for the eastern part of New Mexico. And let us know, and we will immediately get on the phones and immediately get working. One of another little area of success, which isn't I met today. So the other things I've done today is I was here in Roswell, and I said, I love coming to Roswell. I met with ag producers this morning, ranchers and farmers. Went to go follow up on the flooding. I was here a few days after the flooding happened. We got the presidential declaration, still pushing, still finding out where are things getting stuck. Some of the ranchers and farmers still haven't gotten their claims. We're going to try to unstick that. Was out at a medical facility, went out, I've been all over the place. It's amazing how much you can fit in one day. But one of the things that like we did was I went and met with different farmers, and we found out the funding that had been frozen for those farmers that shouldn't have been frozen. So we held a press conference. Guess what happened? That funding thawed, right? And that's why we can't win everything, but if we don't talk about it, and we don't express our feelings about it and communicate that to everybody, nothing happens. It's really only when the people share their stories and the people get involved that you really make things happen. I might have moved away from, am I moving away from stuff? Can you hear me all right? I think I got too close over here. So I think that that's really important, is let us know and then we'll help publicize. I encourage everybody, we have a, she's good. She's the boss of me. I encourage everybody, if you aren't already, follow me, right? And share my posts and sign up for my newsletter so you know what I'm doing. And if you know, and share your stories. We actually have a place on our website and regularly where we ask people to share the stories. And when it's something we can help with, we'll jump in right away. And it really is, it is, you know, Lincoln actually said that you know, if you don't have public opinion, you cannot get anything done, right? It is the public who controls, who should control what happens in Congress. My job is to represent you. And so it's when you let me know your thoughts and feelings that I can then go and represent those. And so, you know, this is like we've done a lot of these, and some of them are very big and some of them are small round tables. So we get up and show up. Another question that anybody wants to raise? Any concerns?
All right, I'm gonna go again.
No, we're gonna go over here.
I used to be a director of case management at one of the local hospitals, and I think that one of the barriers to assisting the veterans is the lack of knowledge of who to contact when you're in that situation of caring for a patient that's going to be discharged and providing for them those items or services that they need, and navigating the system with the VA, because there are certain rules about who pays for what and how we can get things done. And I think it would be very beneficial if these local people made that their contact information available to hospitals and rehabilitation centers to assist with the discharge planning and getting the services that people need, especially transportation in this wide-ranging area of New Mexico, and navigating to the VA in Albuquerque as well as in Artesia. I think that there's a lack of knowledge on case management part and not knowing where to go to find that assistance so that they can help people when they're going home.
This is like so key, right? That there is a failure to communicate between the entities that serve the veterans outside of the kind of the VA institution itself. But the VA institution has an obligation to that veteran, right? But if they are not communicating with those points of contact in the community that they're going to be clearly regularly interacting with, that is a failure, but an opportunity, right? And I think that that is really key. And so I think that with this information, I think there are two things that we should do. One is we're going to make sure that we reach out to those points of contact, and then we're going to reach out to the VA itself and say, what are you doing? Because it's the VA's, like we will try to do the WD-40, the connection, but that's the VA should be doing exactly what you have suggested. And then the other place that we hear all the time is the issue of the distance and the issue of the traveling. And that's why we fought so hard to keep those CBOCs open, right? Because if they would have closed, then people would have had to go 3 hours, 4 hours to get some of the basic community care. But veterans have to travel a lot, and in New Mexico, the distances are huge, and we are relying on volunteers. Right? We are relying on volunteers to drive veterans. And then we are not reimbursing the people who are the veterans when they're traveling, when they have to travel to Albuquerque to get their VA. That's the other big complaint I was hearing over and over again, that we are not addressing the veterans who live in rural areas like they should. And that was an issue that I was really pushing on with the existing VA before. It's sort of, we had a long list of problems that we wanted them to look at. And then what happened, January 20th was, and with that order of firing everybody, then everything got blown up. And now we're in this, like, responding to this crisis and not paying attention to all of these other huge needs where we need to improve the VA. And this is one that offers us a particular, that's not that complicated to do, what you just described. Carlos, do you want to add something to that in terms, like, the minute you started saying that, Carlos was like, oh yeah, that's an issue, look at that.
Yeah, we, I definitely, worked on, several pieces like this. Yeah, the kind of immediate responses, give us a call. And if we can reach out to the VA and kind of make those connections and get those things going, whether it's, just a food card or additional type of benefits or qualification for additional benefits. But yeah, I'd be happy to reach out to our congressional liaison, talk to them a little bit more about maybe some outreach that they can do, to hospitals to make sure that, folks have a good contact person to reach out to, before we get to the discharge point. But, I'll give you my card and, maybe we can chat a little bit.
So also, one of the pieces of legislation that I am a co-sponsor and have worked hard on trying to get done, and it is another bipartisan piece of legislation, is we are failing to make sure that our veterans, before they become veterans, while they're still in their service, get signed up and get all the information they need so that they know what is available to them as a veteran. And the fact that that is not done adequately as they are leaving service is a problem. And it ranges on from some of the basic services that you will be eligible to, if you aren't a citizen and are serving, what are the benefits that you get from that? Because we know we have a lot of people who serve, even though they're not citizens, right? They're residents, and they have benefits that they should get, right? But the Department of Defense is failing in its job to make sure that the veteran, before he's or she is a veteran, knows the benefits that they're entitled to. So that's a piece of legislation that I have co-sponsored and that we will continue to push because we need to do that. And part of the thing is that, yes, that will cost more money because we'll actually have more veterans signing up. But this is one of those areas, it's not a woke issue, right? To serve veterans, it is our obligation because they've served us. They've been willing to lose their limbs, to not spend time with family, to potentially lose their lives. This is a moral obligation that we have to the most patriotic of our population. Do you want to ask a question? Yeah?
Sure.
You're holding a card up, so I thought you might.
It's an equation.
Oh my God, I'm not. I used to be good at math, but that was 52 years ago.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't, follow the same path as most people. And presently, the way things are going, I think that we should look into the VA and see what works. What is working? Now, according to artificial intelligence, not somebody's opinion, not others, and
NVIDIA, Jensen has said that he wants deep thought to be in the process. So that it doesn't just take one perspective and then go with that. So it'll take a multiple of perspectives and then it'll give you a result. So in this deep thought, I asked the question. I said, is the VA profitable? The answer was, no, it's not profitable because it's not supposed to be for profit. It's a single payer system that is funded by the federal government, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that works. Okay, now for veterans that, have served and they are presently in the military and they're called active duty and they have dependents. So let's look at their health care. It's called TRICARE. And it's profitable. Why? Because it's funded as a single payer system through the Department of Defense. And why are they profitable? Well, first of all, in the military, when you have a position that's called your rating, then you have your rank, your pay rate. So I asked, okay, the Affordable Care Act, is that profitable? And that's where we get a chink in the armor. It is helping many, many people. But the fact is that there's too much administration, according to artificial intelligence. And so that's perfect for DOGE. Let's send Elon after the administrative process of the ACA, and let's streamline it. And I asked the question, if we grafted the VA, if we grafted the TRICARE, if we had grafted the Affordable Care Act, would it be feasible or viable? And it says, no. And I go, wow, I guess I'm not asking the right question. Because you have to ask artificial intelligence the right question to get a result. So then I remember hearing Bernie Sanders one day talking about Medicare for all from birth to death. And that's where I inserted a Republican study that was done in the Bush administration, and it referenced that study. It was called the Intermountain Exchange Study. And with that study, it found that with, oh wait a minute, I got a little ahead of myself. But anyways, the reason why I drafted in with the VA, TRICARE, and ACA is that it would exclude people with pre-existing conditions. So then I asked from birth to death, and then with the Intermountain Exchange study that would you just lost me 10 seconds.
I'll give you 10 seconds.
Reclaiming my time.
Oh my God, this guy watches C-SPAN.
Anyways, the point is that if we made everything a single payer system, a police officer, when he goes out on the road, worried about his children, if he meets the wrong person, who's going to take care of his kids? Are they going to be given health care? Everybody, wants, health care. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's if you're sick, you need health care.
Mhm.
So, according to this study, a single payer system from birth using that study, according to artificial intelligence, would be the best solution for it all, because then if you go away in the military, when you come out, you're still going to have health care and your necessities will be met. Cheaper, 1/3 of the whole pie would go to savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was an excellent equation on the back of your card. So I think that you have pointed out something that other countries have already determined is actually true. Like other countries don't have our multiple different kinds of provisions of healthcare so they have a single payer system, often with a insurance overlay that if you wanted to have, so you have a single payer system, so basic healthcare, major things are covered. Some people who say, well, I don't want to wait that long for an appointment, you can get an additional insurance. New Mexico actually, I believe, is going to be reviewing whether that makes sense. Some states are in the review process of that, whether that makes sense. There were pieces of legislation that I signed on to that were saying we should look at that, right? But right now, right now in this moment, we have this fragmented system of providing healthcare, which is part of what I think you're pointing out, right? If you have VA, and VA is an obligation, like we should not mess it up for any of them. But the reality is a lot of veterans also rely on this other system we have, which is Medicaid, right? And Medicaid is right now under attack. And under the Republican budget plan, they want to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. And the people who will be hurt the most when you cut $880 billion for Medicaid are the pregnant, soon-to-be mothers, the expectant mothers that, I was just at one of your hospitals here, where they have about 50 to 60% of their OBGYN patients are using Medicaid, and they're working families, right? But they don't make enough money to participate in the Affordable Care Act programs where you need a little more money, right? So we have way too many, we have a fragmented way of paying for healthcare. And that's, I think, where your query was, what if we had one system instead of all this fragmented, so that people won't spend so much time doing the paperwork that is required under our multiple insurance systems, right? So that hospitals won't have to hire such a large percentage of their staff just to process the paperwork to get prior authorization, to get all of this stuff done, right? And so you are right that those systems, their countries pay less for healthcare than we do. So the inquiry is based on what's happened other ways, but right now we have what we have, right? And we are not in this moment doing the big picture reform. But your question says we need to think about that. And it is important to think about, where do we want to end up once we move out of this, because we're in a tumultuous moment right now. And I do think it's very important. I want to talk about, how do we make sure that our children get the healthcare they need, get the nutrition they need, get the education they need, and then that their parents, mothers and fathers, have a place to have that child be taken care of while the parent goes to work, that there is a amount of money flowing to that family so they don't have the stress that comes from not knowing whether you're going to be able to feed your family, right? It's incredible stress, and it hurts the child's ability to learn. That when that child wants to decide to be a welder, like one of our youth, or to go in their service, or to get your nurse's degree. I was lucky enough to give a nurse an award today, who is the nurse of the year, and she got her degree here at Eastern New Mexico. So that was really wonderful. Shout it out for Deidre. It was wonderful, right? So they can be whatever they want. And then when it's time to retire, that they are able to retire with dignity, with a social security, and if they had a 401k that hasn't been destroyed by trade wars, right? I have a vision that we should have that. We should have a way for people to get housing, that they can afford it wherever they are, whether you're in Roswell or Santa Fe or Mora or Farmington. Everywhere I go, there's a need for housing, that veterans would be able to get access to housing. There is a vision that I hold that we need to get to. And I don't hold it because of artificial intelligence. I hold it because I know that's what communities need. And you were saying that maybe we ask that of artificial intelligence, they say that would make a happy community, right? And I think all of us, whether we're Republican or Democrat or Independent or Green, want us to live in communities that can achieve these goals, that our children can stay in the communities that they love and do what they want to do because there are jobs, because there's healthcare, because there's good education. I think we all share those goals. And so thank you for raising it in that very unique way.
Congresswoman,
But you
we
didn't
have
have the,
some online questions.
Oh, we have an online question?
So we're gonna ask a few of those as well, because, you know. a lot of
Okay,
folks
great.
ask
So what is
questions.
the online question?
So, so it was Tracy Cooper asked, are veteran survivor benefits on the chopping block?
Well, I think what we are very concerned about is because the budget is very fluid, the proposed cuts to the discretionary spending where the VA falls in that are very severe. And so I haven't heard particularly about whether the survivor benefits are, and I hope they are not, because that would be such a violation of, right, of the commitment we made. If you have served, you know that your family has served, and that we must make sure that the survivors receive the benefits. But we will go back and look into the budget to see if they're there. But one of the problems is even if you have not put that on the cutting block, what you have done is remove the people who could actually process the benefits. That's what they're doing with Social Security. They can't get rid of Social Security. They want to privatize it, right? But they can't do that without Congress. But what they've done is cut their positions, so there aren't the people who are answering the phone. There isn't anybody to process it. And that's one of my concerns. But we'll follow up directly on that, because that will be one we fight for a lot, because how dare we dishonor the family when they have given up so much.
I can answer a couple of the questions.
Ooh, we're gonna have a question. I love it when I get help.
I work with or volunteer with the Southeastern New Mexico Transportation Network.
In fact, we had asked you if you wanted to come up and talk, so we're very glad that you're talking now.
Right, and I transport veterans from Carlsbad area and Artesia on up. And we go to all of the hospitals. We'll go anywhere in New Mexico and West Texas. We cover it all. We charge nothing to the veterans for doing this. And it's kind of bad because, as you know, healthcare in New Mexico is not very good. I pick up people from Carlsbad, a 5-hour trip, but just by driving to Albuquerque for a 30 to 45-minute visit and come back. Now we have community care. However, because of specialty problems within this, we have problems with that. We have to take them to UNM. We have to take them to specialty clinics around Lubbock, El Paso, Albuquerque, and so forth. So I do all of that. I transport. And that is a problem for a lot of people. we have a lot of, elderly, veterans. Also, the community care that the VA provides allows, veterans within Carlsbad, Artesian, Roswell, to use local, healthcare when it's available. So that's something that we have. Also, community care is who you would contact for your discharges and so forth. If it's a holiday within the week, like a 4th of July, middle of the week, which I have personally been subject to, they may not be there for a week. So if they don't, you can't get a hold of them for a week, you're stuck. Transportation, like I said, we provide the transportation. I have information here. You also had the vets that are not citizens. There are veterans that have been deported
Right.
that are eligible for VA care that can't get back in the country. We have problems with them. They're stuck in another country with no health care. And as far as the single pay, we're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have single pay. The only one. See, you're a healthcare lobbyist in Congress, paying out. But yes, I'm transportation. I take care of it. I will drive people. We pick them up at their house. We take them to their appointment and we bring them back to their home.
So you have shared with me this work that you've done. You've also shared that it's really important to get other volunteers because it can't all fall on you and the, you know, the few people that are willing to do that because it is a very long way. And when we're failing to recognize that veterans are so far away from their care, that is a failing in itself. Like every time you've told me these stories, I've said, this is not right, right? That you have to drive that far. And I am so grateful, so grateful. Like every time you tell me the stories of what you do and how you do that, I am so grateful for the work you do. We should all give a big hand of applause. I mean, it is like, but you do it for love. Like you love your veterans. You do it for a sense of community and commitment and obligation. This is you being an incredibly patriotic human being.
American Legion, veteran foreign wars, disabled American veteran. My father was a World War II veteran.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran, 20 years. I believe in the veterans.
Yeah, but we believe in the veterans too. Thank you so very much for the work. Over here.
My question is similar to the girl that asked the questions online, so.
Okay, we'll double check. So we'll take your, we'll take about whether the survivor benefits are at risk.
No.
Oh, which was that? That was a question online.
Oh, no, mine is on that vein, though.
Oh, okay.
My name is Heidi Huckabee. I've been in Roswell for.
Oh, Heidi.
Years, right? And staunch supporter of you. So, my dad was, a hero. He served at Pearl Harbor
Wow.
and then was called back to Korea. So I was raised by a veteran and I have a lot of respect for our veterans. With all the cuts and the things that have been going on, those are the ones that made me cry, you know? I think as purveyors of TV or news or whatever, we don't know exactly what's going on. And the word cuts is so ambiguous, you know. We understand when we come to meetings like this, the cuts are in services and transportation and, you know, all that kind of benefits. But, you know, some of the cuts, I'm curious about a cut. I serve on our local cemetery board here. We have a beautiful veterans area in the cemetery that was done by an organization headed up, with a lot of work by Bobby Woolley.
Mhm.
And, I'm curious to see if any of those cuts, detailed cuts, that we don't often know, what are those cuts? You know, we just hear about it and it makes us mad, right? I want to know if any of those cuts are anything that affect the passing of our heroes. The plaques that they put at their grave sites, the flags that they offer to, you know, I realize the people have to buy the columbarium spot and the people have to buy the burial spot. But what about what is provided by the Veterans Association that honors our heroes when they pass? And is that going to be cut? Because that'll piss me off.
So we need to honor our veterans from the day they walk out of the service till the day they die.
That's right.
That has to be our commitment. Our commitment needs to not waver and recognize that when my dad passed and when they handed me that flag and they said, "A proud nation thanks your father for their service." That moment I remember, like, I didn't think it would be that impactful, but you know, the tears started rolling down, right? The tears started rolling down. And you know, my uncle, I had 4 uncles who served, right? I have a big family, 14. And you know, one of my uncles built the wooden frame for the flag. And if you ever watch me, I mean, it's right there, right? And when I do all my online stuff, it's behind me. And I always look at it before I start because I want to remember like how important my dad
never
was in that
forget.
service, right?
You know,
We can't ever forget. Yeah. And it is in that recognizing, and you know, I've been in I'm gonna go off. I went out to Pearl Harbor. I went on a congressional delegation and met with the people actually in Honolulu who work on the MIA, right? And to make sure that everybody comes home, and we got a very in-depth of what the work we do to identify our missing. And it was so important that we continue to do that because it was a promise we made that we would not leave your family. And they are still working on it. And I follow when they identify somebody and let that family know. And the difference it makes to the family that they know they found their uncle, you know, they found somebody, they found their remains.
So
And
that's not getting cut.
I don't think that's getting cut. But what I can't tell you is we don't know. We got a skinny budget from the president. And we know they've been willing to cut the VA before. And so that's where we will when we get out of what we're in now, which is reconciliation, which is their budget, where they want to just cut things they can do it just with 51 votes in the Senate. Then we have to get through the regular funding bill for the United States. And under the regular funding bill, it needs to be bipartisan. And in the reconciliation process, which you guys might have heard, reconciliation, they can do that with a simple majority in the House and the Senate. But the regular budget has to be bipartisan. And that's where Democrats can have a bigger say to stop things, because you need 60 votes in the Senate. But what we're trying to do with all of this work we're doing is we only need 4 Republicans to stand with the Democrats to stop some of the worst that happens. Like right now, we finally have some moderate Republicans saying, I don't know if you can cut Medicaid. Like there is a group of moderate Republicans that are saying, because we've been putting so much pressure on them. How are you going to cut Medicaid? Don't you know what it's going to mean? And I think that's where we might be winning the tide, that they might be pulling back. We've already got 3 Republicans on the Senate who voted against the Medicaid cuts. But this is the same place where we will go and try to, you know, the president's skinny budget came out. It's not good. It doesn't go into details, but this is where we'll go in and fight really hard on the veterans issues. And when we've done that before, like when the PACT Act went to the Senate, we couldn't get enough Republicans to vote for it. So we shamed the hell out of them. And the veterans flooded the phones. And then we got the necessary Republican votes. So that's where veterans, and because you're part of other organizations, right? When you put this out and you share it with all your veterans who are part of other congressional districts that might be Republican, then maybe they change their mind, and that's how you end up winning. So we will fight really hard for this. We'll fight really hard for that, and we know we will follow back up with you.
So we're gonna take another question from online,
Okay.
and then after that, if you want to wrap up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It's from Christopher. I am just growing more concerned about this administration and the way they are treating our democracy and destroying our programs, especially Social Security.
So, I think that question goes on two things. Is one, we are talking today about how do you treat obligation that you owe to veterans, right? Medicaid and other things, or we often talk about what that will do to healthcare, and that we, as a country, we should provide healthcare to, our pregnant women and our working families and the little kids and the people in the nursing homes. We know that the tariffs are really hurting people in their pocketbook. People are getting laid off. Manufacturing is shutting down in different parts of the country. But that question gets to two other pieces. One is Social Security. And I'm very worried about what they're doing to Social Security because they are undermining its ability to actually function. And there is a different way. We know Social Security is at risk, and we have these little cards that, I don't know if you picked up my Social Security card. There's a little Social Security card because there is you have it right there. Want to hold it up? This is a Social Security card right there. So the Social Security card is, we have to address and fix Social Security. You don't fix it by destroying it, right? You don't fix it by destroying it. You fix it by saying, we need to get more money in there. Let's make sure that everybody pays into Social Security taxes. Right now, you stop paying into Social Security taxes. So my bill that I'm co-sponsoring with a bunch of others is called Social Security 2100. We're going to call it a different name now, but that's the bill, and it says, if you earn more than $400,000 a year, you're going to have to pay your Social Security taxes. And if you pay your Social Security taxes, we fix the problem. And everybody should pay their Social Security taxes because we should not be letting our elderly die in poverty. Period. Period. So don't go try to destroy the Social Security Administration and then say, oh, it doesn't work. Let's privatize it, because that's what they want to do. And what happens when you privatize it? You make a profit. You make a profit off of something that people have earned, and that is not right. There are certain things that government should do. Social Security is one of those things. But then there's this other thing about democracy, right? We have a president right now who doesn't know if he thinks the Constitution should be followed. Like when he said that and said, oh, but I have lawyers that know this. No, the president of the United States should say, I stand with the Constitution. If I stand with the Constitution, it means that I respect the courts. And if I respect the courts, I'm going to do, when they rule against me 9-0 at the Supreme Court, I'm going to honor that. I'm going to honor that, because if we are not responding to the Constitution, who are we? We are the United States of America. We are the people who brought democracy back when it had disappeared on this planet since Athens. We are the people who have inherited democracy. And we are the people right now that history is going to look at and say, did you protect it? What did you do? Because especially for veterans who have served in those wars, who parents who have served, who like John, whose every generation have served, they did so not for a single man. They did so for the Constitution of the United States. When we pledge allegiance, it's to our democracy. And our democracy can only exist if we are honoring our Constitution. And it can only exist if we are encouraging electoral participation, if we are honoring our vote, and we are not undermining it, we're not sending thugs to attack the Congress and then pardoning them after they have beaten the police officers who you walk by, who you knew, and I know them personally, the ones who were beaten and suffered, and to have a president pardon the ones who violently attacked the officers who protect us every day, and to not have a single Republican condemn that, just gets me so mad. But that is right. And the way we do, the way we stand up to this historical moment is to show up in small gatherings, in middle-sized gatherings, in huge gatherings. I have been with thousands of people. I've been with 10 people. I've been with 24 people, hundreds of people in New Mexico. You know, I was in a Republican district last Saturday because they won't show up and do town halls. They won't show up and ask questions. So we're showing up to answer the questions. And that's how you protect democracy, is showing up. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day.